This tutorial was brought to you thanks to the supporters on the screen. Check out TAPgiles.com to find more Dreams resources, donate to support my work, or engage my services to get private instruction or help on a project one-on-one. So I made a door, and then I kind of made it creak and squeak at different points, as if it was rubbing against different things as it travels through its range. So I'll show you how to make that. So I'll make a quick door. What I tend to do is just make something that has roughly the right proportions and stamp it and then exit, and then I can just make it really small, make it the right size in the actual scene, like that. Now I want to add a connector, and this will just be a normal bolt. So I'll use a bolt and I'll click on the parent, which will be, it might be the door frame or it might be the ground or whatever you want, as an anchor, and then onto the door with R2 again to use that as the door. Use that as the child object that can actually rotate. So if I turn off grid snap, I can now rotate it, but it's kind of going around that axis as shown by the purple object. So if I turn on the grid again and grab this and press triangle, now it's aligned it to the grid, and I can use L2 and just twist it like that and put it next to the door. If I use L1 and triangle on the door, then it will use that door's grid, and then grab this again and press triangle, and it will snap to that grid, which will be kind of central to the that edge sort of thing. So I'll just adjust it. I'll use X-ray. So it's right on the side and in the center of the door, kind of thickness wise. So now if I try and do that, it rotates just like a door. Now we want to kind of have some setup where it moves around by itself. So for that I'm just going to use a force applier over here, and I'll have it affect the whole scene. And then we'll use it in arrow mode, directional mode. So if we have this pointing over there, it will push the door in that kind of direction. Now we want it to kind of push and then pull and then push and pull, so it kind of goes the full range. So if we just test with this, I can give it a negative speed and then it will be pulling towards it instead of pushing. So to kind of modulate that over time, I think I'll just use an action recorder. Like that, and I'll just play time and then have it go to a negative and then back to positive and stop recording. So now it'll kind of flap over there a bit and then flap over here a bit and so on. So that's cool, but we don't want it, the doors don't tend to just be able to fly all the way around, but they have limits to them. So we can add limits to the connector. We tweak the connector with L1 and square. So if I turn on limits, then I can see it has like these yellow ends to it and this blue part here. So if I move the blue part to match the door and press triangle to kind of snap it to the grid, then when I rotate the door, you can see it's kind of stuck. It won't go beyond those limits. So if I put the grid on again and then snap this to down maybe here and the other yellow ones over here, then it's got a 180 degree movement to it, and it will stop at those ends. So the angle of this isn't helping it. So what I'll do is I'll just adjust the angle and see if that works better. Actually, if we do it like that, then when it pulls from like this direction. It'll be able to get it better, like that. So it's kind of slamming on either end, so that'll be fine for testing. Now we'll add a chip, and we'll just hold L1 and snap it to that door. So it's just, it'll move with the door as the door moves, and we'll get a couple of sound effects. So I like to go to the Dreamiverse, go to Quick Start Collection, sound effects, and there's machines and movement, and then friction and stress, and then down here are some nice ones. So I'll grab that one, and I'll grab another one for flavour. Whoa. Yeah, that sounds good. So for testing, I'll actually tweak both of these and turn off 3D panning so that I can always hear them even if I'm like looking at it from above or far away or something weird. So that's very useful for testing. So at the moment they're just both going to play no matter what every time, regardless of what the door is doing. What I'd like to do is have, much like doors in the real world, this one might play only like in this section here, because like the hinges happen to be rubbing against each other in this spot, but over here the tension isn't on those hinges, so then it's okay. So particular parts of where this door is through its opening and closing will have different sounds, and it kind of makes it feel a bit more realistic. So to kind of map this rotation to different ranges that these will be powered on, I'll actually use a timeline. So here's our timeline. If we add a value slider, you can actually wire that into the playhead or any value. So then if you send it a value between 0 and 1, a percentage, then it will actually control where in the timeline the playhead is at, and so it will control which gadgets are being activated by the playhead. And from the other side, you can actually tweak the connector and get this connector completion. So if you wire that into the value slider, if I rotate the door, you can see it's actually giving us a percentage from 0 to 1, depending on how far through the limits it is. So if we wire that into the playhead, then rotate the door, it's actually got these different areas that we can use to power different things. And in this case, we're going to power different sound effects. So put that on there, put that on there. Something to be aware of, because this is just a sound effect, this is an audio recording. So when an audio recording starts getting powered, it will just play from the start or however you've set it up. So even if it starts from here, it's not going to start playing the recording from this point in the recording. It will play it from the start, for example. So you can actually just say, play whatever is going on here during this playhead time in the timeline. Drag the end like that. So at this angle it will give the metal stress, and at this angle it will give the wooden splintering sound. So the problem is it's still playing. If we tweak this sound, we can watch this to see what it's playing, and that's these little circles. So it actually carries on playing even though this isn't powered, because it's on once mode, which means if it gets powered, it's going to start playing from the beginning and keep playing until the end. So we'll change this to sustain, and we'll change this one to sustain as well. And now it'll only be playing stuff while the playhead is over it. But now if we lower the strength of the force applier, the door is going slower. It would be cool to have this be quieter as well while it's over it, because if you open a door really slowly, then maybe it creaks less, something like that. So we can actually find out how fast this rotation is by using a rotation sensor, and it has the first one on the outside of the gadget, angular velocity. So this is how fast it's rotating in general. So we can wire that into the power, because if you power a sound to less than 100%, then it will affect the volume to less than 100%. And when you power a timeline, that carries through to all the gadgets on the timeline. So now if we try that, so if we actually turn off that and just rotate it by hand, we can like rotate it really quietly and get a very tiny bit of that creaking. If we go fast, then it's a lot louder while the moving it quickly. So let's just fiddle with that a little bit. Let's put it through a signal manipulator and go to custom remapper. And what I'd like is for it to be even quieter when you're moving it slowly, and then past a certain point it will just get a lot louder. So if we click on this with X, the remap curve, we can go to ease in. So for values where it's moving really slowly, or this amount slowly, then it will output a tiny amount, and then beyond this it will get bigger and bigger and louder and louder. So we can just use that instead. So now we can get basically silent if we move quietly, but then if we move quickly it's a lot louder. Now to test, I'll just leave this at full volume. So you can tell it takes like a while to get into it, sort of thing. So what I'll do is I'll tweak this and tweak the start time offset so it starts around here instead. And now when we go over it, it's immediately nice and loud. But then we'll have it smoothly come in with the ADSR, which means when it starts playing something, it will take that amount of time to get to full volume. And we can have it trail off as well, like that. Do the same for this over here. Right, so now if we play time, yeah, so it doesn't have a harsh starting, but then when you go out, it kind of stops more abruptly. So we'll make that have a bit of a tail off as well. Another thing we can do to give this some randomness is hold L1 while setting the start time offset, and then it will start at any point during there. So if we now test this, it's like starting in the middle, and sometimes it starts at the beginning or the end. So every time it sounds a little bit different. You can also adjust the volume with holding L1 to give it a range of volumes and give it some pitch shift stuff. So now every time it sounds a little different. Or you may want to go the other way. So let's do this on this one and have it be exactly the same every time, because it has that exact same stress to the hinges or something. So if we use L1 and X, we can see all the different audio recordings. So we can just find the one we like. So I like this one. I'll just delete the other ones, and that will sound the same every time that we go into here. So you can imagine if it's like moving in the wind, blowing in the wind sort of thing, you get that repetitive sound to it, which might be good. Maybe you could just make the volume random or something, just selectively. Sometimes it's louder, sometimes it's softer, things like that. And put that back in there. Turn this on, and we can up the strength again so it comes back. That sort of thing. So it's quite cool. Now if we want to make these come from this door area, we can actually add that back in. We can tweak these and add the 3D panning again. But if we want to have them both come from the same place, we can use a special gadget in the sound section called a speaker. You can put that on the microchip and then move this dot around, and this is kind of the center of that sound. And the bubble that can adjust with R2 is while you're inside that bubble, it's full volume now, no matter what. Outside of here, it'll depend on if you're like looking away or looking to the side, and it'll kind of come out of different speakers. So we go over here. So that came right out of the right speaker, but not out of the left speaker because it was to our right. You can turn that 3D panning off in the speaker, but it just kind of absorbs all these sounds because it's in the same chip. Cool. So now you have some cool creaking stuff. Thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new. Go to patreon.com/TAPgiles to get 5 hours of tutorials early for $3. Here's a preview of what you can learn if you choose to become a supporter.